I'm Daniel. I'm 32. And if you asked anyone in my family to describe me in one sentence, they'd probably say something like quiet but dependable. That's the role I've always played, reliable older brother, the guy who helps move couches, fixes leaky faucets, picks people up from the airport, and never makes a scene. I'm the one who gets called when the power goes out or the Wi-Fi's down, not because I'm some tech genius or handyman, but because I always show up. Always. I don't argue, don't complain. I just do it. That's who I've been for years. And to be honest, I didn't even realize how much people had come to expect that from me. Like it was my job just to exist in service to everyone else. Until my sister's wedding knocked the wind out of me. My younger sister, Brielle, is 29. She's the kind of person who fills up a room without saying much. Glamorous, loud in a charming way, always posting curated Instagram photos with perfect lighting and humble brag captions. She's always been our parents' golden child, and I don't say that with bitterness, just facts. She was the surprise baby, the one who came after my parents had basically decided they were done having kids. And from the second she was born, she had everyone wrapped around her finger. Growing up, it was always be nice to your sister, she's younger. Or let her have it. Daniel, you're older. You should know better. And I did. I knew better than to expect things to ever really be fair. Still, I tried to be close with her. Even when we were teenagers and she'd roll her eyes whenever I spoke. Even when she borrowed my car and returned it with a dent and no gas and our parents just shrugged. Even when she forgot my birthday 3 years in a row and then laughed it off like it was no big deal. I kept showing up. I helped her move into every apartment she ever rented. I fixed her old laptops when she spilled drinks on them. I even built her kids' IKEA beds last Christmas Eve while she was out with friends because her husband was busy and she needed the house to look nice for Santa. So when Brielle got engaged, I was genuinely happy for her. I even told her I'd help cover some wedding expenses if they needed it. She laughed and said, "Thanks, Danny, but we're going all out. No expense spared." The guy she married, Josh, comes from a wealthy family, and they threw this massive, over-the-top wedding at a country club about 40 minutes outside the city. Everything was planned to the last detail. Designer flowers, custom cocktails, a string quartet for the ceremony, and gold-trimmed menus printed on linen paper. I remember thinking it was a little much, but hey, if they had the money, who was I to judge? About 2 weeks before the wedding, I got an email from her wedding planner. Yes, she had a full-time planner, asking for my meal preference, filet mignon, seared salmon, or a vegetarian risotto. I filled it out like everyone else and didn't think much of it. I had even taken the day off work, gotten my suit dry cleaned, and bought a nice gift from their registry, a ridiculously expensive espresso machine I honestly couldn't afford. I figured it was a small gesture to show her I cared. The day of the wedding, I showed up early to help wrangle some family members into their seats and stayed out of the way otherwise. I wasn't in the wedding party or anything, but I figured I'd at least be seated with my cousins or parents. Instead, when the seating chart was revealed at the reception, I was shoved into the far back corner at what I can only describe as the obligation table, the one with people nobody really knew well but had to invite. I recognized a couple of distant relatives and one of Brielle's co-workers I'd met once. No place card, no greeting, no explanation. I told myself it was probably a mistake. Then the dinner began. Or at least, it did for everyone else. Servers started bringing out trays to the tables. White-gloved hands lowering plated meals with gleaming silverware, salads drizzled with balsamic glaze, wine glasses being refilled with practiced ease. And then one of them walked up to our table, looked down at the list in her hand, and hesitated. After a pause that felt like it lasted forever, she leaned down and placed a single paper plate in front of me. Not even one of those fancy heavy-duty ones. This was a bendable, no-frills white plate with what looked like half a scoop of potato salad and a slice of unbuttered bread. No silverware. No napkin. Just that. I blinked, honestly thinking it was some kind of weird joke. I looked around, and nobody else had one. Every single other person, every guest, every +1, even the DJ, had full place settings. I sat there for a moment, frozen. That's when Brielle walked past with her new husband on the way to the head table, her champagne glass in hand. And when she saw me staring down at the plate, she smirked. Not smiled. Smirked. Then she leaned over, and in the voice of someone who thinks they're being clever, whispered, "Be grateful we even invited you." I laughed. Not out loud, not bitterly, just this soft, stunned exhale. I didn't say anything. I just reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, and took a selfie with the plate. Her smirk faded a bit when she realized I wasn't reacting the way she expected. I didn't ask questions, didn't cause a scene, didn't tell anyone what happened. I just smiled for the camera like I was in on the joke. The rest of the night was a blur. I didn't eat. I didn't even stay for the dancing. I left before dessert was served, told my parents I had a headache, and drove home in silence. When I got there, I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes staring at that photo. Not because I was sad, though, yeah, a part of me was, but mostly because I couldn't figure out what I had done to deserve it. Had I said something? Missed something? Or was I just always going to be the guy who showed up, gave everything, and got handed scraps in return? I didn't text her after the wedding. I didn't call. I figured she'd forget all about it anyway. Maybe she already had. I posted the selfie to my private Instagram with no caption, visible only to my close friends. A few of them messaged me asking what happened, and I told them I'd explain later. I never did. It felt too stupid to talk about, too petty to say out loud. My sister gave me a paper plate at her wedding. Who even believes that? A month passed, then 6 weeks. Life moved on. I threw myself into work, started going on runs in the morning, even picked up an old guitar I hadn't touched since college. And just when I thought I was done thinking about that night, just when the sting had faded enough to move on, I got a text from Brielle out of nowhere. No greeting, no apology, no reference to the wedding at all. Just one sentence. Hey, can you watch the kids for a few hours Saturday? Daycare's closed, and Josh has a golf thing. I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was to ignore it. The second was to reply with something snarky. But in the end, I just typed, can't. Sorry, that should have been it. But it wasn't. She texted again 2 days later. Hey, if you're free this weekend or next, we could really use you. Things are tight with daycare, and I'd rather not ask Mom. When I didn't respond right away, she sent a follow-up. We're not asking for much, just a few hours every weekend. You're good with the kids, and they love you. And that's when it really hit me. I wasn't even a person to her. I was a resource, a backup plan, a warm body she could call when things got inconvenient. And suddenly, I wasn't just annoyed, I was furious. Not the loud, throw something kind of anger. This was quieter, colder, the kind that builds slowly until it sits in your chest like a weight. And I knew exactly what to do with it. I opened my photo gallery, scrolled back to that night, and found the selfie. The paper plate. My forced smile. Brielle's wedding glittering behind me like a scene from someone else's life. I saved the image and waited. Waited for her next message. It came the next morning. I didn't respond right away. Her text just sat there for a bit, blinking at me like it expected me to cave. Any chance you're around Saturday morning? The kids have a birthday party after, so it'd only be a couple hours. I almost laughed. It was written so casually, like we were just good siblings doing each other favors. Like she hadn't humiliated me in front of 200 people not even 2 months ago. Like I hadn't sat in a folding chair with a paper plate while a server walked past me carrying a tray of steak and wine glasses to my cousins at the next table. I sent the photo. No words. Just the photo. Me, half smiling with my chin tilted slightly to catch the fluorescent ceiling light, holding that ridiculous paper plate. You could even see the crimped edge bending from the weight of the sad little potato salad. No explanation, no caption, just that. Read at 9:06 a.m. And then nothing. Not for an hour. Not for the whole day. I thought maybe she'd reply with something sarcastic, maybe a half-hearted LOL or an eye-roll emoji. But instead, radio silence. And that silence lasted 5 days. When she finally texted again, it wasn't what I expected. You're seriously mad about the plate? No apology. No reflection. Just a challenge. A tone I recognized immediately, dismissive, condescending, like I was overreacting to something trivial. I read the text 3 times and tossed my phone on the bed. It took me an hour to even type a reply, and all I wrote was, "You knew what you were doing." She responded in under a minute. It wasn't my idea. The planner mixed up some stuff. Don't make this into a thing, Daniel. So now it was the planner's fault. Right. The same planner who personally emailed me with meal options? The one who had enough attention to detail to know my dietary restrictions. I have a mild dairy allergy. I even noted it. But somehow forgot to give me a plate like every other guest? Please. Still, I didn't press. I let her stew in the awkwardness of her half-lie. I didn't respond again. I figured that would be it, that maybe she'd get the hint and leave me alone for a while. But no. 2 days later, she called. I didn't answer. She called again an hour after that. Then my phone buzzed with a long message. Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm asking for help here. Josh and I are drowning. Our nanny quit. Daycare's too expensive, and we don't have family nearby. I thought you'd want to help, considering you don't have kids and you work from home. You always used to say you loved spending time with Ava and Leo. What changed? What changed? That line sat in my gut like a stone. What changed? What changed was watching my sister pass out champagne to everyone in the room while I sat there feeling like the guy who had snuck in through the back. What changed was being humiliated, on purpose, and then gaslit about it like it wasn't a big deal. What changed was me finally realizing that maybe I wasn't being the dependable older brother. Maybe I was just the family's emotional punching bag. I typed a response. Deleted it. Typed another one. Deleted that, too. I didn't know how to explain to her that this wasn't just about a plate. This was about years of being taken for granted. Of always being available, always making space, always pushing aside my own needs for hers. Of being the one she leaned on, but never really saw. So I said nothing. I didn't answer her next 3 messages. That's when the shift happened. She stopped asking and started telling. I really need you Saturday, just from 10 to 3. Josh has a meeting and I can't cancel on my friend again. I'm dropping the kids off at your place. Please leave the door unlocked. That was the moment I felt something crack inside me. Not break, not snap. Just crack. A long, slow fissure through something I'd spent my whole life building. My patience. My quiet tolerance. My ability to just take it and move on. And then, without warning, my mom called. Now, my relationship with my parents has always been, let's call it unbalanced. They weren't bad people, just highly selective with their attention. Brielle was the star, always. She was the dancer, the pageant girl, the straight-A student with the bright future. I was the quiet one, the helper, the son who never needed much. Hey, sweetheart, my mom said. Her voice was warm, practiced, the kind of tone she used when she was buttering me up for something. I just talked to Brie. She says you're having a little tiff? A tiff. A tiff. Like I'd refused to pass her the salt at dinner. Like I hadn't been humiliated in front of our entire extended family and all her friends. I stayed quiet. She's really struggling, Daniel, my mom continued. You know she wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Josh works a lot, and with everything going on, well, you don't have kids, so you wouldn't understand. There it was. The classic line. You don't have kids. You wouldn't understand. Because apparently, in our family, having children turned you into a martyr and granted you access to a special kind of sympathy that erased all your past behavior. Mom, I said carefully, did she tell you what happened at the wedding? There was a pause. A long one. She mentioned there was some issue with the seating, she said finally. But honey, that's water under the bridge, isn't it? It wasn't. And she knew it. I hung up without saying goodbye. It was the first time in my life I'd done that to my mom. And it felt awful, but also necessary. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid in bed replaying every moment from that wedding. Every tiny cut from the last few years. Every unacknowledged favor. Every birthday ignored. Every holiday where I sat alone at the kid table because they ran out of space. And suddenly, I remembered something. Brielle's bridal shower. A month before the wedding, I had offered to help set it up. She declined, said her friends had it covered. But then she called the day before in a panic because her balloon arch collapsed, and her charcuterie vendor bailed last minute. I dropped everything, drove across town with my folding table, picked up supplies, and spent 4 hours slicing cheeses and rolling salami into little roses because that's what she saw on Pinterest. She posted photos afterward, tagged her friends, never mentioned me. I remembered every single slice. The next day, I blocked her number. Not just muted, blocked. Then I blocked my mom's number, too. I turned off my phone and drove to the lake an hour away. I sat there on a rock with my feet in the water, breathing, thinking, watching the sun start to dip behind the trees. It was the first real silence I'd had in weeks. That's when it hit me. She wasn't going to stop. None of them were. Because they had never been taught what my boundaries looked like. Because I'd never shown them. But now I was done. That night, I opened my laptop and created a new album. I titled it Receipts. And I started collecting. The texts. The bridal shower photos. the messages from my mom, even the RSVP email from the wedding planner. I screenshot them all, organized them, labeled them. I wasn't even sure what I was going to do with them yet, but I knew I needed them. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for clarity. For proof. So that the next time someone tried to spin the story, I'd have the whole picture. But Brielle wasn't done. Not even close. Because 2 weeks later, she showed up at my apartment, with the kids. Unannounced. Banging on the door. Calling my name. Daniel. Come on, open up. I know you're home. I saw your car. Ava and Leo were with her. Leo, the youngest, had tears in his eyes. Ava looked confused. She was holding a backpack with cartoon dinosaurs on it. I just need a few hours, Brielle said through the door. Josh is out of town, and I'm going to miss my appointment. You're seriously going to let your niece and nephew sit in the hallway? I didn't answer. I just stood there behind the door, heart pounding, hands shaking, because this wasn't about babysitting anymore. This was about control, about entitlement, about her thinking she could drop her kids at my door like packages and walk away. After 10 minutes of knocking, she finally left. But I knew, deep down, she wouldn't let it go. And that was the moment I realized. I had something she needed. Something she couldn't buy, manipulate, or guilt her way into. Access. And I was about to take that away, permanently. But not yet. Because first, she had to learn what it felt like to be ignored. Really ignored. To need someone, and know that they'd stopped caring. To finally feel what I'd felt for years. I just didn't know yet how far she'd go to get back what she'd lost. But I was about to find out. I didn't open the door. Not when she banged. Not when she shouted. Not even when Leo started to cry. I stood there on the other side of the frame, back pressed to the wall like I was the one intruding. My hand hovered over the lock more than once. Every instinct I'd trained over a lifetime of just be the bigger person wanted me to cave, to open it, to say, all right, come in, I'll take them just this once. But I didn't. I stayed still, quiet, like a ghost in my own home. Eventually, her voice faded. The footsteps shuffled away. I heard the elevator ding. Then silence. That moment, those 10 minutes, should have felt like a victory. A turning point. But instead, I collapsed onto the floor like someone had pulled the plug. All the adrenaline, all the rage, it drained out at once, and I was left sitting there in the quiet, feeling like a monster. What kind of person lets their niece and nephew cry in a hallway? What kind of brother ignores his own family? I didn't sleep that night. And not just from guilt, though that was part of it, but from something heavier. A kind of sadness I hadn't known I was carrying. A realization that I wasn't just drawing a boundary. I was tearing down an entire structure I'd helped build. The Daniel they all knew. The one who always said yes, who never pushed back, who was dependable and invisible at the same time. He was gone. And in his place? Well, I didn't know yet. The next week was quiet. Eerily so. No texts. No calls. No pop-ins. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I had finally earned peace. Then I opened Facebook. My aunt had tagged me in a comment under a photo from some birthday party. It was one of those chaotic family events where people eat too much cake and the kids are sticky with frosting. I hadn't been invited, of course. But that wasn't what hit me. The caption on Brielle's post read, "Thankful for family who show up when it counts. We may not have a village, but we have each other." My stomach flipped. It was so perfectly curated, so disgustingly fake. There she was, surrounded by people holding her kids, smiling like the picture of maternal sacrifice. No mention of me. No room for the truth. Just this polished image of a struggling mom doing her best with the little support she had. And the comments. Oh, the comments. "You're such a strong mama. I don't know how you do it all, girl. Superwoman. Let me know if you need a sitter. Wish I lived closer." I scrolled through them, heart pounding, jaw clenched, reading people praise her for surviving a storm she helped create. And for a moment, I wanted to comment. To write, "She has family. She just burns them out and then plays the victim." Or maybe post the photo again, the paper plate, the smirk, and let people draw their own conclusions. But I didn't. Instead, I logged out and deleted the app from my phone. Because I knew what this was now. It wasn't just about me. It was about narrative, control, image. And if I was going to truly step away from it all, I had to let go of that, too. I had to stop needing them to understand. That was the lowest point for me. Not the wedding, not the hallway, not even the Facebook post. It was that exact moment, sitting in my apartment, realizing that closure might never come, that they might never apologize, never see it from my side. That no matter how calmly I explained, how carefully I laid out the facts, they'd twist it, make it about their struggle, their hardship, their perspective, and I'd still be the quiet one, the one who changed, the one who snapped. I cried that night, not for them, for me, for the years I'd spent chasing approval like it was a prize I just hadn't earned yet, for the family I thought I had, for the version of myself I had to bury just to survive. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's quiet. And in that silence, something shifted. The next morning, I made coffee, stared out the window. Then I opened my laptop and did something I'd been putting off for months. I updated my portfolio. See, I'm a freelance designer. Logos, branding, UI work. I've always had steady clients, but I never really pushed myself. I kept my rates low, never marketed, never asked for referrals. I told myself it was because I liked staying under the radar. But deep down, I think I was scared. Scared to take up space. Scared to ask for more. Scared of becoming the kind of person my family would whisper about behind my back. But now I had nothing to lose. I spent the next 3 days revamping everything. I built a new website, rewrote my bio, reached out to past clients, and asked for testimonials. I even signed up for 2 design platforms I'd always avoided, thinking I wasn't good enough. Within a week, I landed 3 new clients. Within a month, I doubled my income. And with every new project, every glowing review, I felt a piece of myself return. Not the Daniel they knew, the quiet one, but the Daniel I'd buried under years of forced humility. I started going to the gym, too. Nothing intense, just moving my body, lifting weights, breathing deeper. I changed my morning routine, started journaling, bought a coffee machine that actually made me excited to get out of bed. And slowly, I rebuilt my life. But here's the thing they don't tell you about rebuilding. It's lonely. Even when things are going well, even when your calendar's full and your bank account looks healthy, there are moments when it hits you like a punch to the chest. They don't care. They don't check in. They don't notice. They just move on. And that realization hurt more than anything else. Because for all the talk about family, about unconditional love, it turned out mine had conditions. Quiet ones. Unspoken ones. But real. And now that I wasn't playing the role, I was written out of the script. That fall, I spent Thanksgiving alone for the first time in my life. No invite. Not even a group text. I saw photos later, Brielle hosting, of course. The table was set beautifully. Matching plates. Candlelight. Even the kids had mini place settings with gold napkin rings. I almost laughed. The irony wasn't lost on me. I made pasta that night. Watched old reruns. Went to bed early. And you know what? It was peaceful. Quiet. Mine. A few days after that, something unexpected happened. I got a message on LinkedIn, of all places, from Josh. Yeah, Josh. Hey man, not sure if this is weird, but I saw your news site. Impressive stuff. Didn't realize you were doing so well. That was it. No, sorry. No, hope you're doing okay. Just a little poke. A fishing line, thrown out to see if I'd bite. I didn't respond, because by then, I'd learned something important. When people only reach out once you're thriving, it's not about you. It's about what you can give them. Still, I won't lie. I stared at that message for a while. I imagined responding, being cordial, maybe even letting him know how much that wedding had hurt me. But then I remembered Ava's confused face in the hallway, the single paper plate, the way my mom had said, "It's water under the bridge, isn't it?" And I realized I didn't owe them anything. I had my own bridge now, and I was finally learning how to cross it without looking back. What I didn't expect, though, what caught me completely off guard, was what happened next. A knock at my door. 3 months after I'd blocked her. 3 months of silence. And there she was. Brielle. Alone. No kids. No makeup. No smirk. Just standing there with something in her hands. Something that would change everything. She was holding a scrapbook. At first, I thought it was a photo album. One of those sentimental gestures you see in movies when someone tries to make amends. But as I stood in the doorway and Brielle held it out toward me with both hands, I realized this wasn't an apology. It was something else entirely. "I thought you might want this," she said, her voice lower than I'd ever heard it. No sugar, no performance. Just flat. Like she was exhausted. "You made most of it anyway." I took the book and flipped it open. Pages of birthday cards. Photos from our childhood. Drawings I'd made for her when she was 6. A wrinkled flyer from her first school play, where I'd drawn stars in the margins and circled her name. "You kept this." I asked without meaning to. She looked down. Mom did. After she passed it to me, I figured you'd want it. I almost threw it out a few times, but she trailed off. I didn't invite her in. I didn't step aside. We just stood there in the hallway like two strangers who'd run into each other in front of a house neither of them belonged to anymore. Is that why you came? I asked. To give me this? She nodded slowly. But then, after a pause, added, and to ask for a favor. There it was. I felt my jaw tighten, like muscle memory. She couldn't help herself. Even now, especially now, she only showed up when she wanted something. It was almost laughable how predictable it had become. But then she looked me in the eye and said, Josh left. Just like that. 2 words. No build-up. No emotion. I blinked. Wait, what? He packed a bag last week. Said he couldn't do it anymore. Took the car, the guest room TV, and half the savings. I found out there's someone else. Maybe more than one. She gave a bitter smile. You were right. About all of it. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I had no idea how to process this. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. Another part, maybe the louder part, felt nothing at all. Not satisfaction. Not schadenfreude. Just emptiness. Then came the ask. I need help. Just for a few weeks. I can't afford full-time daycare, and I'm working double shifts. Mom said you might. I cut her off before she could finish. No. Just that. A single word. No apology. No justification. She flinched. I'm not asking you to watch them all the time, she said quickly. Just the mornings, maybe? Until I get back on my feet. Please, Daniel. They miss you. Ava asked about you yesterday. I hated how much that line hurt. But I didn't budge. You didn't come to see me when she asked about me. I said. You came because you needed something. Her shoulders slumped. I know, she whispered. But I'm really trying. I didn't answer. Eventually, she turned and walked down the hall without looking back. The scrapbook still in my hands. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, heart racing, not from anger this time, but clarity. Cold, clean clarity. This wasn't about babysitting. It never was. This was about patterns. About how people treat you when they think you'll never leave. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just walking away, I was planning something. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense. No screaming. No public takedowns. I didn't want to burn her life down. I wanted something quieter. I wanted the truth. So I started paying attention. It began with social media. Despite everything falling apart behind the scenes, Brielle kept posting like her life was intact. Carefully framed photos of the kids baking cookies, tagged with #blessedmoments. Quotes about strength and healing. A smiling selfie in the car, clearly hiding the tension in her eyes. And the comments? Flooded with sympathy. You're doing amazing. Josh didn't deserve you. Single mom life looks good on you. But here's what most people didn't know. Brielle was not as alone as she made herself out to be. Because while she posted about having no one, I noticed something strange. A recurring name in her tags. Kendra. Kendra was an old friend from high school. Someone I vaguely remembered from years ago. Pretty, ambitious, and messy. She used to be one of those girls who lived for drama. And it looked like she was back in Brielle's life with a vengeance. Digging a little deeper, I discovered that Kendra had recently launched a momfluencer brand. Something about resilience, healing, and parenting through hardship. Her content had a very familiar tone, because a lot of it sounded like Brielle. Same phrases, same hashtags, even the same captions. Then I found the podcast. Kendra and Brie, Stronger Than Yesterday, launched a few weeks prior. Weekly episodes, light banter, dramatic storytelling, and healing through humor. And sure enough, in episode 3, Brielle told the story of how her brother abandoned her in her time of greatest need. She didn't name me, but it was me. She described the paper plate incident with tears in her voice, framing it as an honest mistake the planner made, and how her brother used it as a reason to turn his back on her. She said, I know I'm not perfect, but I would have never let my niece and nephew cry outside someone's door. Never. Family is supposed to show up, even when it's hard. That line, it burned. Because it was a lie. A beautiful, crafted, sympathy-gathering lie. But the thing about going quiet for a while, people forget you were listening. I downloaded the episode. Saved it. Then I looked into the LLC that owned the podcast. Kendra's name. And Brielle's. Equal partners. A small-time sponsor had already signed on. A baby blanket company. Nothing huge, but enough. Enough to matter. So here's what I did. I reached out to Kendra. I didn't threaten her. Didn't accuse. I played it cool. I pretended I wanted to sponsor their show. I created a fake email account, posing as a rep for a startup parenting app. Said we were interested in working with authentic, family-first creators. Asked for a media kit and listener demographics. Kendra was ecstatic. She sent everything. Audience metrics, back-end numbers, their sponsorship rate card, and something else. A link to a private Dropbox folder filled with press assets, including a bio page. And in that bio, Brielle had claimed she was a full-time single mom with no family support. No family support. I laughed out loud when I read it. Then I screenshotted everything, organized the files, made a folder called PR versus reality. And then, I waited. I didn't want to nuke her brand. Not yet. I wanted something better. I wanted her to feel it. The slow unraveling. The same way I had. So I started talking to people. Quietly. Cousins who'd reached out after Thanksgiving. Old friends who'd drifted. Even our mom, who, after my silence, had finally left a voicemail saying, "I think I might have misunderstood some things." I told them my side. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. Just truth. I showed them the texts. The wedding photo. The podcast clip. I let them draw their own conclusions. And slowly, I saw the shift. The Facebook likes on her posts dipped. The comments grew fewer. Mutual friends stopped reposting her quotes. I didn't gloat. Didn't call her out. Because I wasn't interested in public humiliation. I was interested in silence. In isolation. In her finally seeing what it felt like when the people you relied on disappeared. But I wasn't done. Because the final piece of this puzzle, the moment I'd been waiting for, was coming. I just didn't know it would arrive so perfectly wrapped. 3 weeks later, I got an email from the podcast sponsor, the baby blanket company. Apparently, my fake startup had gotten their attention, and they reached out for a collaboration. To Brielle's real email. And she, thinking it was legit, forwarded it to Kendra, who forwarded it right back to my fake inbox, excited to close a big fish. Which meant, I had her. I had proof that she was willing to fabricate her story on a business platform for personal gain. And suddenly, I wasn't just her estranged brother anymore. I was holding the string that could unravel her entire facade. But I hadn't pulled it yet, because I was waiting for the moment she'd come crawling back again. She texted me again on a Sunday morning. "Hey, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but if there's any part of you that still cares, I could really use your help." It was short. No emojis. No guilt tactics. Just a quiet plea. I stared at it for a long time. She didn't know what I had, what I'd been building. She didn't know about the folder on my desktop labeled Final Move, or the way I'd turned her fake vulnerability into a breadcrumb trail of receipts. She didn't know I'd been gathering everything, not to ruin her, but to show her a mirror she couldn't smash. And most importantly, she didn't know I was finally at peace with the idea of letting go after she saw it all for what it really was. I didn't reply to her text. Instead, I waited 2 days. Then I sent her a package. It was small, just a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was a flash drive, a printed note, and a single photo, the original selfie, me at her wedding, holding the paper plate. The note was short. "Here's everything you forgot I remembered. You made me invisible. I made you transparent." I don't know what part she opened first, the image, the note, or the folder on the drive marked "In case you forgot." That folder contained screenshots of her podcast episode transcript, with the fabricated claims highlighted. Screenshots of her bios across multiple platforms describing herself as estranged from family and doing it all alone. An audio recording of her voicemail to mom begging for backup just for a few weeks. A saved copy of the fake brand proposal and her enthusiastic email agreeing to it. A collaboration she thought was a real sponsorship opportunity. And finally, a PDF titled "The Timeline You Erased," a clean, chronological list of the times I'd helped her over the last 5 years. Moving, babysitting, fixing things, the charcuterie roses, the 3 a.m. emergency pharmacy run when Leo had a fever. It was detailed, undeniable. She went silent for 4 days. Not a word, not a text, not even a passive-aggressive post. Then Kendra messaged me from her personal Instagram account. It was polite, professional, and just a little panicked. "Hi, Daniel. I just wanted to reach out because there's been some confusion about a potential sponsorship deal. I understand you may be in possession of some content that includes me. I'd love to clarify or discuss how we can resolve this amicably. Translation, please don't blow this up. I waited a full day. Then I responded, you weren't the target, but you chose your partner. Don't build a brand on someone else's broken story. She left me on read. 2 days later, the podcast quietly vanished. No farewell episode. No explanation. Just gone. The Instagram page followed. Then the Twitter. Kendra rebranded solo a few weeks later, posting vague quotes about outgrowing people and learning to walk away from drama. But the engagement tanked. Sponsors stopped tagging her. The flame fizzled out. And Brielle? That took longer. I didn't hear from her again for almost 2 months, until she showed up at my apartment. Again. This time, she wasn't holding a scrapbook, or the kids, or even her phone, just herself. She looked tired, not worn down in the way motherhood does to you. This was different. Deflated, like she'd finally seen herself from the outside and didn't quite recognize the person staring back. I opened the door, said nothing. She didn't ask to come in. She just stood there and said, you were right. That was it. Not an apology, not a performance, just quiet truth. She went on, haltingly, told me the fallout from the podcast killed her last chance at monetizing her platform. How a mutual acquaintance leaked screenshots of the timeline PDF to the parenting forums she used to post in. How sponsors ghosted her. How Kendra distanced herself and even hinted in her stories that Brielle had exaggerated her trauma. She said she had to move back in with mom temporarily, that she was working weekends at a boutique and looking for a second job. I know you probably don't care anymore, she added, her voice cracking a little. But I just wanted you to know. I see it now. What I did. What I let myself become. I let her speak. I let her sit in it. Then, calmly, I said, I'm glad you do. But this isn't about you anymore. It never really was. She blinked. Then what's it about? It's about me finally choosing peace over guilt, I said. About me realizing that I'm not responsible for everyone's mess. Especially not people who hand me paper plates and expect me to be grateful. She looked like she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she nodded. Once. Like she accepted it. Like she understood this door wouldn't open the way it used to. She turned and left without asking for anything more. And this time, I didn't feel like a villain. I felt free. That was a year ago. Since then, I've doubled my client base, started mentoring new designers, and even gave a talk at a conference about knowing your worth. I didn't mention Brielle, of course, but I told the story about the paper plate, about drawing boundaries, about letting go of the need to be understood. And when I finished, a woman in the front row came up to me afterward and said, I have a sister like that. I just smiled and said, most of us do. Thanksgiving this year, I spent it with friends. The kind who bring real plates. Who pour wine without keeping score. Who don't ask you to shrink so they can shine brighter. I still have the photo. It's printed now, framed on my desk. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Because sometimes, the smallest plate is what carries the biggest lesson. And now I serve myself. Every time.